Should we close the door? Sorry. What? Oh.
Go for it, you're on.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for attending this session today. And I wanted to start off by saying that it's a pleasure and privilege to be kicking off this Women of OpenStack Brownbag series today. My name is Madhura Maskasky. I'm co-founder and VP of product at Platform 9 Systems. And for those of you who do not know what Platform 9 is, we have a very interesting way of packaging and deploying OpenStack as a web service. Before starting Platform 9, I spent about 7.5 years at VMware, where I was a technical lead and architect as part of different products in VMware's management portfolio, such as VMware vCloud Director, VMware vCenter, Lab Manager, etc. So today's topic is about VMware plus OpenStack, or in particular, why isn't the combination as popular as we think it should be? Okay, because on one hand, you're talking about OpenStack, which is one of the topmost open source projects today. It has become almost a de facto standard when it comes to building private clouds of today and future. And on the other hand, you're talking about VMware, which is hands down the gold standard when it comes to building virtualized infrastructure. Right? But the combination of the two is not as popular as one would think it should be. Right? And let's talk about why that is. So before we get into that, here's a quick snapshot into popularity of OpenStack. Right? So this graph shows a Google search trend result comparison of OpenStack, which is in red line here, and comparing that to VMware vCloud plus vRealize plus vCAC. That's plotted by the blue line here. And this graph clearly shows that interest in OpenStack is significant and high. Right, but so if you presented this data to a VMware administrator today, he would say, well, that's great, but before I trust OpenStack to deploy and manage my production workloads, I need to understand A, what's in it for me, right? And B, how disruptive of a change it's going to be, right? Is it going to be a complete rip and replace, or is it going to be more of an incremental transition? So let's talk about the first point first, right? What is the benefit that OpenStack offers to a VMware administrator? And if I were to summarize the benefits in 2 key points, the first one would be simply better automation, right? OpenStack fundamentally enables that scalable management fabric that lets a VMware user take what he has in terms of vCenter and cluster and ESX resources and transform that into an Amazon EC2-like cloud, right? And that cloud comes built in with a number of key features such as self-service portal for your end users, kick-ass Amazon-like REST APIs, right? Developers absolutely love this. Better tools for reducing configuration sprawl. And these are just few key points, as part of number of benefits that better automation offers to you. Right, and secondly, and probably more importantly, it's about open source versus proprietary. Right, OpenStack at this point has gained enough momentum to be pretty much the de facto standard when it comes to building private clouds of today and future. It's got a ton of support and sponsorship from a number of enterprise vendors, and it has a thriving and growing community of developers and contributors and users and DevOps folks. But most importantly, I think what OpenStack has been able to achieve is it's established an open API standard, an open API standard that's very influenced by Amazon. And it's a standard that customers or end users can hold their vendors accountable for. Right? So I think that's a very important benefit of OpenStack to a VMware user. And so I think it's more or less clear that OpenStack has significant benefits to offer to a VMware environment, right? And then let's talk about, well, why is it that VMware and OpenStack combination is not so popular today, right? And we think, some of the reasons behind it are, go towards the limitations of VMware and OpenStack driver, the way it's implemented today. So I'm going to spend next few minutes just talking about, getting into the depths of some of those limitations, and I'm going to talk about possible ways to address those. So the first one is about cooperating with existing environments and workloads. Right? A typical VMware environment today consists of one or more vCenters, a number of ESX clusters or ESX hosts, and large amounts of workloads. Right? But the VMware OpenStack integration today requires you to keep that aside and pretty much start with a greenfield environment. Right? That's the only way to make OpenStack work with VMware today. But for a VMware administrator, the question that you would ask is, well, I have all these existing workloads and environments which have the issues that you talked to me about that OpenStack can solve. Why can't I just migrate or move those workloads to OpenStack and transform them into an OpenStack-based cloud in a more or less non-disruptive kind of way? Right? So enabling or offering that ability in OpenStack would be one key step towards making it easier to deploy for VMware administrators. Okay, the second one is about making templates first-class citizens in OpenStack. Right? OpenStack Ga's image catalog today has built-in support for vApps and VMDK files. But we all know that the most common way in which a VMware administrator manages his virtual machine images today is via VM templates. Right? So I think it's almost imperative that OpenStack adds support, GANs adds support for treating templates as first-class citizens so that it makes it that much easier for an administrator to take what he has today in terms of existing images and transform them into a GANs-based image catalog. Thirdly, and this is an important point, a good out-of-the-box story for SDN. Right? If you look at today's implementation of VMware plus OpenStack integration, and if you ask the question, well, if I'm interested in deploying Neutron because I've looked at all the benefits it can offer to me in terms of my networking automation, what are my options? The only recommended option, at least recommended by VMware today, is, well, you have to deploy an SX. Right? And I have an issue with that because first off, an SX is just horribly expensive, right? And more importantly, it may not add a value for every customer environment. It's built with a number of really powerful advanced features, but not every customer might benefit out of that, right? So what would really help is to just have an out-of-box story or out-of-box implementation that takes existing port groups, existing vSwitches or DV switches that a customer has, and creates a default NSX or a default SDN implementation that works with Neutron, and that gives you some of the core benefits of software-defined networking. The fourth one, support for multiple vCenters. Right? If you're a VMware administrator running a VMware environment at scale, you likely have more than one virtual center environment. Right? You likely have that because you're trying to go past scalability limits of vCenter, or because you have infrastructure setups that are geographically separated, and you need to manage them by deploying separate vCenters. So it's really important in order for OpenStack to be that single pane of glass interface that lets a VMware administrator pull together these diverse resources across geographies and really manage them through this single interface. It's important for OpenStack to have that built-in support for integrating with multiple vCenter environments without requiring to create separate OpenStack silos, one per vCenter. Resourceful become compute nodes. This again is an important point. If more than 90% of VMware environments today, VMware enterprise environments, I would say, utilize VMware DRS and VMware clustering. Right? And if you take a snapshot of a typical vCenter setup where DRS is being leveraged, you will see that the administrator has created few clusters, but a lot more resource pools. Right? And resource pools are pretty much those building blocks that an admin uses to sub-allocate and divide resources across his teams. For resource pools are used for allocation to different use cases, different teams, different organizations. So the VMware and OpenStack integration today only supports integrating with clusters. Right? And I think what would be more useful is to also support integration with resource pools, pretty much as compute nodes in OpenStack. And finally, and this is, I think, a key point, support for standalone ESXi. Right? And And some of you would know this, that there was support for standalone ESXi as part of VMware OpenStack integration, but it got deprecated out as part of the Juno release. And this is really important for any VMware administrator who is looking to build a VMware-based OpenStack cloud at scale. Right? Because if you look at the current recommended way to integrate with VMware for OpenStack, it is to go through vCenter and then to interface or integrate with VMware clusters. Right? But that's slightly broken because what you're asking for is the requirement to go through this intermediate management layer, which means you're now subjecting your private cloud to the scalability limits of that management layer, right? vCenter has its scalability limits, DRS has its scalability limits, clustering has its scalability limits, right? So what would be far more efficient, I think, is to skip this intermediate layer and to have OpenStack integrate directly with your ESXi hypervisors, right? That can really help in building clouds that can easily scale horizontally. So in a nutshell, I strongly believe that VMware and OpenStack can be the dream team, but with the right coach and the right kind of training and the right kind of enhancements to current implementation of VMware plus OpenStack integration. Thank you so much for attending this session.